Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my basically the wrap up of all the reading I did through the end of June since the last time I filmed a recent and current reading video. And also at the end of me talking about the books that I've read, you'll see some clips of from different things that I've seen and done over the month of June. I'm also going to talk about how I did with the Reading Women Month Bingo. It is currently June 30th in the afternoon. I'm not going to finish any more books this month, so I figured it would be a good time to film my wrap up, talk about how I did on the Reading Women Bingo, and show you guys a few clips of things that I saw and did in the month of June. So let's get to it. I've got my list, my book journal down here in my lap, so I'm going to have to refer to it because some of the books I don't have copies of anymore. And the first one is a graphic memoir called Belonging by Nora Krug. This is a nonfiction memoir from a woman who was born in Germany and then immigrated to the United States and grew up in the United States, and then is trying to come to terms with her German past and her German heritage. I first heard about this book on Mel's channel over at Mel's Bookland Adventure, and I was really interested. I really loved the format. I wish I had the copy. I borrowed it from the library, but it's a graphic novel where there's a lot of text, and it looks like it's written by hand, like an actual journal, and then with photographs and illustrations illustrating the contents of the narrative. And it's a really excellent look at a person who is German and struggling to reconcile, her need to know about her German heritage with the things that happened in Germany leading up to World War II and then World War II with the Holocaust, obviously. And I thought it was really fascinating point of view that we don't often hear about, because most of the time at least when I've read World War II narratives, they've been from the perspective of the atrocities that were committed on the Jewish people during the Holocaust. So I found it really fascinating anyway. I really loved the format, and I thought it was an interesting read overall from a perspective that I personally had never read from before. The next book I read, completely different, was a romance novel called Red, White, and Royal Blue. The author was Casey McQuiston. And this is I guess what you would call a new adult romance, because the characters in this book are in their early 20s, and it's a romance between the first son of the United States, the son of our first woman president, if only it were true, and the second son of the British royal family, so a prince. And so the prince and the first son have a sort of antagonistic relationship in the beginning and then fall in love, and then the fallout from that, how that would impact both the political climate in the United States and the political climate of the monarchy in the UK. I thought it was excellent. The dialogue is witty and funny and seemed very realistic to me for that age group of people. A lot of social media, a lot of the story is told through texts and emails and that sort of thing, which I thought was absolutely realistic for that age group. And the love story was adorable. Just a heartwarming read that made me laugh and cry in turn. I thought it was amazing. And if you like romance novels, and if you like political issues, I think you would love Red, White, and Royal Blue. I buddy read Complications on Surgeon's Notes on an Imperfect Science by Atul Gawande with Kazan from Always Doing. And this book was awesome. Everything I've read by Atul Gawande has been amazing. He is such a great writer, and it's just fascinating to me how he balances all of the things that he's good at and does. Being a surgeon, he's a professor at a medical school, he writes for the New Yorker, he writes his own nonfiction books. He's just one of these people that can do everything and does it well, and his writing is just fabulous. And this is a collection of essays that he wrote about being a surgeon and things that surgeons have to go through and worry about as they become surgeons, from being a new doctor and what that's like, and the first time you do surgical procedures, and all the way up to what happens when you're presented with a patient who you don't really know what's wrong with them, and potentially, if you can't figure it out, they could be in life-threatening danger. And everywhere in between, the essays were fascinating and really compulsively readable. Both Kazan and I both had this is broken up into 3 different parts. The first part is fallibility, the second part is mystery, and the third part is uncertainty. And we both had the same experience where we had to sort of time our reading, so because we just couldn't stop once we would start reading a section. So like we would comment to each other after each part, and we wouldn't dare start reading the part until it was almost time to comment, because we knew we were just going to sit down and blow through it without stopping. There was no, read an essay here and then wait a day and read an essay there. It's just too good for that. So highly recommend Complications by Atul Gawande. The next book I read was one that I read for the BookTube Prize, so I can't talk about it other than to tell you what it was, and that was West by Carrie Davies. I then read Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is a YA novel about a young woman in high school. I think she's a freshman or a sophomore in high school. I can't remember now for sure. I love this cover, by the way. It's so beautiful. I actually listened to this on audio, although I own the hard copy, because I've started a new strategy of, in order to winnow down my to-be-read pile even more quickly, I've decided to look on Scribd and my online library system to see if audiobooks are available of the physical copies I own of books. And one that was available to me on Scribd was Speak. So I listened to this on audio, but the physical copy is very beautiful. This is all about a young girl that finds herself an outcast as she starts her new year in high school, and because she has over the summer gone to a party where she called the cops, and the party was busted up and some kids got arrested, and so everybody in her school blames her for this, for calling the cops and getting this party busted up. And as the book continues, you start to realize there's more to the story than you know in the beginning. And what this young woman goes through in this first year of her high school, like, the kids are incredibly cruel to her. She suffers bullying and just absolute torment from the other students. The teachers don't help her out. She becomes very withdrawn and uninterested in school. Her parents are like not paying attention, and so as she starts to do more poorly and more poorly in school, they just get angry at her for saying that she's not trying, and she just can't deal with what's happened to her at this party. And you don't know until later on in the novel, things are revealed slowly over the course of the story. And it's beautifully written and heartbreaking and absolutely an important read. I would say anybody that likes YA, please give this a try if you haven't already. I mean, obviously, it's been nominated for the National Book Award, and Laurie Halse Anderson is well known as an amazing writer, and there is definitely good reason for that. I loved this book, and I thought this was, just tremendously important and well done. I then read another really awesome YA novel. I had it from the library, and that's The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. And that is a middle grade novel written in verse, all about, I guess it wouldn't be middle grade, it would be YA, because the main character is another high school student. And unfortunately, I listened to Speak and read The Poet X at the same time, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, because it's both about teenage girls going through some pretty horrific things, although Speak is about, sexual assault, and The Poet X is more about a young girl experiencing racism and struggles with her mom over her mother is Dominican. Her parent, let's start over. The Poet X is about a young teenage girl whose parents are from the Dominican Republic. They all live in the United States now, and our protagonist is dealing with the very strict rules of her parents because they're Dominican. They feel very strongly about, that she shouldn't date and she shouldn't be hanging around with boys, and she should be going to church and going through her confirmation and all that sort of thing. And our protagonist, who I'm not remembering our main character's name, and I'll put it on the screen here somewhere. I'm terrible with character names. But she's questioning her religion and her faith. She doesn't even know if she wants to go through confirmation. What she does know is she loves to write, and she loves to write poetry. But she doesn't feel that she can share that with her family, other than her twin brother, who they are very close. But her parents are just not people that she feels she can share her deepest, darkest secrets with, and she particularly is in conflict with her mom. It is so beautifully written. I ended up at the end crying. It really, really touched me. I felt like, especially having it be written in verse, it just became so much more emotional even than a prose story would have been. And I just felt so strongly, I felt all the feelings that our main character was feeling so strongly that it brought me to tears at multiple occasions. And it's a beautiful story. Obviously, it's won tons of awards, and for good reason. It's just simply a beautiful book. And then the next thing I finished was my audiobook from yesterday. I finished Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, a classic, which I thought that I had read, but as I listened to the story, I realized I had not read it. Again, this was one that I had on my physical TBR, and one of these wonderful rubbery covered classics. I really, really like these that are produced by Canterbury Classics. But I ended up listening to this on audiobook, which I enjoyed the audiobook experience. I believe the narrator was Juliet Stevenson, who's, of course, excellent. But I did not particularly enjoy this story, and which was strange for me because I have really, this is probably the first Jane Austen that I didn't love. You guys all know that Pride and Prejudice is one of my top favorite reads of all time, if not my top read of all time. And I've read it multiple times, and I just love it, and the dialogue is so good. This one just, everybody irritated me in this story. Like, literally everybody irritated me. Willoughby is such a loser, and I can't understand why Marianne ever, fell in love with him. And the brother, oh dear Lord, the brother. So Eleanor, so let me back up. For anybody that doesn't know what Sense and Sensibility is about, we're following two sisters, Eleanor, who's the eldest, and Marianne, who's the younger daughter. There is a third daughter, but she really doesn't figure into the story. Marianne falls in love with a young man named Willoughby, who turns out to be not so great. And Eleanor is in love with Edward, who also I didn't think turned out to be so great, but his reason for the things that he did, I guess, was more forgivable than the way Willoughby did the things that he did. So anyway, I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to give it up. And I wish I could remember John Dashworth. John Dashwood, I think it's Dashwood, is their family name, Eleanor and Marianne. Is their stepbrother or half-brother. I couldn't figure out the family relationships very clearly, but so Marianne and Eleanor's older brother, anyway, John, is such a, oh my God, he's so irritating. He's such a, what is the word? First of all, he's completely dictated in every action that he takes by his wife, who's such a bitch. And so he's supposed to be providing, and the dad dies and leaves his stepmother and his sisters, dependent on his largesse. And his father, calls John to him on his deathbed and is like very particular and like, I want you to take care of the girls. It's up to you as the oldest son. They're your family, and I expect you, to look out for them and provide for them in the way that that I would want you to do. Which John agrees to do on his father's deathbed. And then his bitch of a wife says, oh, well, he couldn't have meant, that you should take care of them monetarily. Why would you take away money from our family and give it to them, even though they're wealthy and can well afford to settle some money on Eleanor and Marianne? But he won't. And then not only will he not make sure that they're taken care of financially, he's just an ass to them all the time. He completely insults Eleanor every time they meet. Every conversation that he has, he's just incredibly insulting to her. And I just, like, Eleanor, of course, is supposed to be the sensible sister, and Marianne's the one that has all the sensibility. She feels all the emotions, right? But I just thought, Eleanor, stick up for yourself. Like, don't let him talk to you like that. And she would get her digs in, every once in a while, politely, of course. But I just found everybody irritating to the extreme. I mean, all the characters, of course, there's a wide cast of characters. As all of Jane Austen's book, it's supposed to be a comedy of errors and manners. But it just... all of the other characters were just so obnoxious. They were so obnoxious that I know I'm supposed to find them amusing and I'm supposed to laugh at them, but I just found myself to be, just completely irritated. So for the first half of the book, anyway, I was like, I don't even know if I can finish this. I'm finding it so irritating. And then the plot kind of picks up. Like, after Willoughby, becomes the villain, basically, I was more interested in following the story. But still, not a favorite Jane Austen for me. And I'm sure that's an unpopular opinion, but I just, really irritating characters in that book. And I went directly on from that to another book in the Book 2 prize. I finished today, A Ladder to the Sky by John Boyne. And I won't say any more than that. I will talk about all my Book 2 prize reading next month after this round of judging is done. And then I have one DNF to tell you about. And Sean would be so proud of me that I have a DNF, a bail as he calls them. This is Dropped Threads, What We Aren't Told. A collection of essays edited by Carol Shields and Marjorie Anderson. And so this is a collection of essays that was published in the early 90s, I believe. Let me just check just to make sure that I'm right about that. Oh, sorry, even later. This is 2001 this came out. And it's a collection of essays, I think mostly Canadian female authors, writing about what it's like to be a woman. And the kind of stories and experiences that they've had that really inform the experience of living life as a female. And it's supposed to be like reflective and thoughtful writings. Some are humorous, some are not. All about, like motherhood, female friendships, what it's like to be a woman in the workplace, just all of that sort of stuff, and things that, is supposed to be about experiences that amazed you, disappointed you, or, somehow or other made an impression on you, being a woman. And there's some really big names in this collection. I think Miriam Taves is in here, and Margaret Atwood. So, some big names. And it seemed like all of the stories are told from like the 50s and 60s. So it's read very old fashioned to me. The humor was very like Irma Bombeck to me, if that's dating me. I'm sure it is, but it's very like Dear Abby, kind of like from the 80s kind of writing, and I was just bored. I just didn't care. So I said, you know what? Life's too short to read something that's boring me. So I just let it go. And I'm really proud of myself because that one was also on my physical TBR, and so that's gone. So before I stop, that's all the books that I finished that I hadn't already talked about on this channel. I wanted to just quickly show you, this is my Reading Women bingo card. I took a page out of Doris's book and printed out the bingo card and then taped it into my bullet journal, and I've been tracking my reading, and I'm super excited that I have gotten 2 bingo lines. So that's pretty cool right there. Oops, I just and just notice that the stickers that I used, if you can see them, are little bookworms. Aren't they cool? I love them. So the 2 lines that I got was, I got the diagonal line, if you can see that, a diagonal line, and then I also got the second line from the bottom across. And so I'll just tell you what ones I completed. I also completed some other random ones, but I did, as Mel had talked about in one of her videos and somebody else had talked about, now I can't think of who it was, using one book to meet multiple prompts, which is what I did as well. So on the first line here, or my first bingo line from the top right-hand corner to the bottom left-hand corner, I read A Rural Setting, and for that, it was Magnificent Spinster. And for LGBTQ, I read Red, White, and Royal Blue. For my free space, I used Speak. And for mental health, I used Collected Schizophrenias. And for YA by a Woman of Color, I used The Poet X. And then for my line across, there was Road Trip prompt, which was West by Carries Davies. Mental health, which I just talked about. Graphic novel, I used Belonging. And I've covered up this one with my worm, and I can't read it, so let me just, oh no, don't rip. Asian author, I used the Collected Schizophrenias again, and then borrowed book, I used Belonging because I had borrowed that from the library. I did have a few other prompts that I completed in June, like the beach read, I used Ancillary Sword, which was a sci-fi, and essays was the Collected Schizophrenias, romance novel, Red, White, and Royal Blue, and a beautiful cover, I used Poet X because that cover was absolutely beautiful. So I really loved using the Reading Women bingo card to focus my reading in the month of June. I read a ton of female authors that way, which is always good, and I was able to get a lot of books off my physical TBR by hitting those prompts. So that was a win-win for me. So all in all, a very successful reading month in June. Here's looking forward to July, hoping it's going to be just as successful. I have one more book to read for the BookTube prize for this round that we're on currently. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. And I have a few days off here and there in July. So hopefully that means extra amounts of reading time for me in the month of July, and I'm realizing this video is like way long, so I apologize for that. So I'm going to stop now. Stay tuned if you want to see clips from some activities and places I went in the month of June, and if not, I will see you in the next video, and I'll talk to you later. What do you think about this rain? Huh? You like it? Mosquitoes fierce, even though it's pouring out. Rainbows over Canada.
Boom.